Hello, listeners. This is Johnny Gwynn, producer of the Agent 251 podcast. In this episode, Agent 251 strikes up a New York City sidewalk conversation with the accomplished luxury real estate expert, Lindsey Stokes Robinson. Known as a power connector in the New York City real estate market, she shares her story, leadership style, career ups and downs, and some 5-star Big Apple wisdom on breaking in and understanding the luxury real estate market. You may notice the sound is quite different than a normal Agent 251 podcast. That's because you are hearing all the wonderful sounds of a hustling and bustling major city in the background. While it might be a little distracting at first, give it a chance. I promise you're going to feel like you're standing in the middle of Manhattan with Lindsey and Jason talking shop. Thanks again for listening and enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Agent 251 podcast, the real estate show that looks deep into the work and culture at JWRE, Jason Will Real Estate, in Mobile and Baldwin counties. Jason, Agent 251, investigates and spills the beans on his case closing clues and industry secrets for motivating agents while educating buyers and sellers.
Lindsey,
hi.
You ready?
Yes.
Thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
You're like super busy, right?
I'm busy, but not...
Super busy New York luxury real estate agent?
Yes.
So how long have you been in the business?
So I've been in the business 6 years. Before that, I worked in finance for about 6 years, too.
So what made you want to make the switch into this crazy world of real estate?
I had met I always loved interior design, and with my business background, I made a few introductions to realtors, and then I, through a family friend, knew a real estate agent in the city who had suggested that it might be a good fit. So I started working with her, and then a few months later, I just started, my own team.
How did it go? I mean, you immediately started your own team right out of the gate?
Well, I grew into the team. Eventually, okay. I started out on my own. And, in the beginning, it was difficult being on your own and not working under someone. But now, having built up to a team, probably I've had a team now for about a year, and I'm growing dramatically. It was all worth it. I think a lot of the hard work that I put in is finally paying off.
So what is the structure of your team, if you don't mind telling us?
So I have one assistant and 2 salespeople.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're the lead listing specialist, I presume?
Yes.
And you've got a buyer's agent, or?
No, I don't have it set up that way. I have it set up where I have a senior salesperson and a junior salesperson.
Okay.
And so they're doing both buy side and sell side.
Oh, right.
So there's certain price points that the junior agent's on and other price points that the selling agent's on for me. They also bring in their own listings. The junior agent works on rentals.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So you're going to talk to us today about the luxury market.
Yes.
So did it take you a while to break into this luxury market?
It did, and it took me a while to figure out, especially now, this day and age, there's a lot of mass marketing happening, and quite a bit of it is effective, and particularly with social, we've had success with that, but it really isn't as effective. I've noticed, at least in New York City, for the luxury market, needs to be a bit more of a refined approach in terms of how you market to high net worth individuals. Mm-hmm. And so it took some process for me to figure out how to reach those people. And a lot of it has to do with, number one, obviously providing exceptional service. But what I've been successful in being able to do is really find people that are the best at their job. So whether it's a wealth manager, even a concierge at either a hotel or a residential property, and aligning yourself with them. And then they become your advocate and make the introductions for you. And that is, referrals are always the best, but particularly for people that are very private, have a lot of money, and really want a trustworthy source, that has really been critical to building my luxury business.
How do you establish that advocacy?
Initially it's about just being present, right? So I gave an example. I'll give you one example with a wealth manager. So I actually had gone to a wealth manager because I was taking a trip to China for work a couple of years ago. I needed a partner there that was going to be able to provide some sort of finance or just options for potential buyers that I was bringing from China. So I got an introduction through a mutual friend, have since stayed in touch with him and attempted to refer business. We've done deals together. And because I've established that relationship over the years, I now am getting referrals from his high net worth clients because of the job that I've done for him.
Gotcha. So he feels, or she feels comfortable referring people to you based on their personal relationship with you on the business side. They've seen how you work.
That's right. Yeah.
Do you have to go to a lot of parties and charity events, and are you involved in the community? Does that help?
It does. It's something that I do, and I'm actually getting more involved in just because I've moved to a new neighborhood. I now have a daughter, and so there's a networking kind of family thing that has really started to kick in now that I've had a daughter. But on the flip side, I don't have as much time to do all of the social networking that I was doing before. So it's really about focusing on the people in my sphere that I know are connectors to high net worth individuals. So, not just wealth managers, but previous clients, always reaching out to them with some sort of value, not just, hello, how are you doing? How is your property? It's someone is looking that I know for a certain piece of art, and I have a very good connection for an art dealer. Like, why don't we go to this event together? So always about, not necessarily related to real estate, but creating some sort of meaning and value to seeing each other face to face, and then, always being the professional they go to for real estate.
I think it's a really good point. It's one that transcends real estate no matter price point.
Yeah.
Because I think realtors a lot of times fail to establish that with not only their clients but their sphere of influence, that I'm the go-to person I'm the conduit, come through me for everything, and then I'll direct you to the right place to go. So constantly reminding them, hey, if you need a tradesperson or any sort of work done in your home, or want a good person to help you plan a Disney vacation, I'm your go-to person. So,
and that goes back to what I was saying too. I mean, just aligning yourself with people that you know are exceptional at their job, because not necessarily you're going to get a referral from them, but being able to give that person's name to someone and then they provide good service for your client then balloons from there, right? So you just want to make sure that your network is of the same caliber as you in terms of how you deliver service.
Have your friendships, the net worth of the friends you're making, or is that increased? Because you hear all the time, your income is the product of the top 5 people that you hang around with.
Yeah, so that's true. That's true. I mean, I think it's a blend. I've certainly started to meet people that, my husband runs his own business too, so we definitely have been meeting more entrepreneurial people because that's just the spirit that we have. But we also have friends that are still in corporate America. And, it's a blend. In New York, it's good because there's always a very diverse pool of people to, associate with.
Yeah, because you're working with people from all types of countries and cultures and a wide variety of folks. So if you're working with people from China, let's say, I saw an article on your Facebook page, I mean, culturally, you have to understand certain things so you don't offend them, right?
It's true.
Yeah.
And even down to negotiating on their behalf, or, I've been on the sell side deal where there's a buyer that's Chinese, it's very, to be aware of culturally how they negotiate. It's important. And by no means am I an expert in every, different nationality, but it is important before you get yourself in a situation where you're representing someone to understand culturally what they expect.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the expectations of the luxury client.
Sure.
So have you found some common denominators there of what they expect from you?
Yes. The first thing that comes to mind is discretion. So, I mean, the number one priority for many of these people is to keep everything that they do private, particularly significant investments like real estate. And so it's important to be able to advise them, you should put this in an LLC. I've had attorneys sign for the LLC because you can actually, everything's recorded, so sometimes you can make out a signature. Just that level of detail is very important to them, and be able to advise them. All sorts of NDAs signed, even sometimes before showings. And then I've had clients also that are recognizable to the public eye, and so just making sure that you have a car and a situation set up where, you're not going to be trailed, and, meeting points and things of that nature. But usually, that's the first thing that comes to mind is privacy. I would say the second thing is just, there's an expectation for you to understand not only the real estate market, but how that, is affected by the stock market, being able to have an intelligent conversation. I mean, many of my clients are in finance or attorneys, And so there's an expectation beyond just your micro knowledge of the neighborhood for you to be able to talk intelligently about what's going on beyond that and how it can affect, even in the world markets, how it can affect the micro market.
How about on the marketing side? Do you have to spend a great deal of money per listing on marketing, or is it more a networking-based approach?
So it depends on the client. I do, for very high-end listings, tend to go kind of above and beyond in terms of offering video content, drone content in some cases, which in New York is not often done. Because I think there is something important about branding a property, particularly higher-end properties. And right now in New York City, the market is flooded. I mean, the high-end market is suffering. And so you need to really have a unique value proposition for the seller in terms of what you're going to do to advertise. So that's number one. The second expectation regarding just in general marketing to high net worth individuals is they do expect, visually something beautiful, right? So it's not, if you're doing a mailing to certain addresses that are high-end properties, it's not going to be effective if you're just sending a postcard. Last year I had created these trifolds mailers that were very pretty, very brief, used some very high-end visuals and just gave market stats that were, minimal, and that I found was effective. People responded well to it. I sent to my sphere, what I call above $5 million sphere, and people really liked it because it was a beautiful piece. It was short and not, a tremendous amount of text, and it was helpful. It added value. So that, between marketing to them and the listings, I tend to go a little bit heavier on spending the money. And then, yes, there is, involved in that are networking events. So I often do an event, not just a broker's open house, but some sort of event to bring, the targeted buyer into the property, whether it's, a wine tasting or some sort of art, depending on the size of the property, if we can bring art in there, like something that's really going to add value. Because the thing is, in New York City in particular, people that have a lot of money are invited to a ridiculous amount of events. They have access to things that you and I don't on a daily basis. And so in order for you to really bring people into the property, you need to be adding some sort of value that they can't get elsewhere. And it's hard to figure that out.
Right.
But it's part of the strategy that I think about when I'm listing a property.
Do you find that they expect you to be more available than maybe a lower end client?
No, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I think that in more cases, I think maybe they expect the response time to be quicker than lower end. But in terms of calling me at 12 o'clock at night, no. Because I think, a lot of those clients, they value their time too. And, depending on their situation, they just want to get business done and move on to the next thing. So I haven't, at least personally, I've not run into a situation where they expect me to call them at all hours of the night. I have done that. But.
Right. Do you set boundaries very firmly with clients as to your accessibility, or are you pretty flexible there?
I do, unless it's an international client. So
right.
I will be on the phone late, I will offer to be on the phone late, which is their morning. But if not, then I have a strict time between 6 and 7 when I'm putting my child to bed. And that's my time with her, and that's not touchable.
Right.
So I have that, and thankfully I have a team to cover showings during that period of time. And then I usually kind of dive back in, between 7 to 8:30, and then after that I really try and check out.
Are y'all using that term, y'all? You hear that often?
I love it.
Do you guys use the internet to find luxury buyers?
The internet to find luxury buyers. In listing it on StreetEasy is the main website here. Trulia Zillow is not really used in New York City. So
because you don't have an MLS, correct?
No, and so that's why StreetEasy has been so powerful here, which takes the control out of our hands, which isn't the greatest thing.
Right.
But yes, that's kind of the main connector for locally for how people are looking around. But as far as advertising, the New York Times is often really good, and the Wall Street Journal is really good for reaching high net worth individuals. But and maybe I'm not answering your question right. Do you mean for listings, or do you mean for?
Well, it just international clients, luxury international clients in general. they're coming to you somehow, right?
Yep.
Where are you connecting with them?
A lot of it is done through co-broke deals. So most high net worth individuals internationally are represented by agents, right? So a lot of what I do, in addition to trying to find those direct buyers, which is ideal, is you need to have a good reputation within your market as it relates to agents that you're going to be co-broking with, because the majority of deals, I would say probably 90-95% of deals in Manhattan are done on a co-broke basis. So there's an agent representing the buyer, there's an agent representing the seller. So it's very important for you to have a good reputation and for you to have relationships with top brokers and people that are bringing in, people from China or Europe or wherever it may be. So that's a big part of my marketing plan too, is to be able to get those people to preview the property, because that's often going to be the case. They're kind of the first line of command before the actual client will come into town and take a look at a property.
Is there anything in the real estate association that would prevent you from doing you don't have an MLS, but doing some sort of listing agreement, just manually inputting it into Zillow to using Zillow? Or
we use it.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. No, when I say that Street Easy is the main one, it feeds into, our listings feed into everywhere.
Okay, so that still has a syndication factor like the MLS?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, yes, I just wasn't familiar with that. So that's interesting.
I know, it is. And REBNY, which is the Real Estate Board of New York, has been trying forever to establish that so that there's more control. And it's, there's been iterations of it, but it just is not yet up and running. So
I wonder if there's some politics behind that. There's some brokers with power that want to
stay away from that. But perhaps. But my brokerage, Compass, is doing a tremendous job in creating a fantastic search platform. I mean, both internally and if you go to their website, and that's one of the reasons why I moved there, because they've done a great job, particularly in New York, where there's an opportunity for that, in trying to get more people to come to Compass.com instead of Street Easy.
Yeah, well, we were in Boston. We were speaking with Jill Boudreau, and she has recently moved to Compass, I think pretty recently, and just raved about the technology.
Yeah. It's phenomenal.
So it's
really
huge. What's your goal for your business maybe in the next 5 years? Where do you see it going?
I definitely, in terms of numbers, I have doubled my business the past 3 years. I would love to continue to do that. I mean, the team is really formed in the past year. So I'm focusing more, granted, I'm still focusing on doing deals and growing the business, but I'm really focusing a lot on systems because, I've done a lot of the growth myself, and now it's about me training my staff and my salespeople about everything that I've done to grow the business to this point. And so that's been my focus for this year, is to really get that fully nailed down with 2 salespeople and then scale from there.
So we do a lot of things that I'm wondering if the fundamentals and the foundation of the real estate industry, the day-to-day, and even the team building would be, the same for you in terms of script practice and role play and power hours and prospecting and all these type of things. Do you guys do a lot of phone prospecting?
I personally do not anymore, but I used to. And when you say prospecting, I kind of blend that in with also just reaching out to previous clients, not just completely cold calling.
Right.
And so, yes, I am now teaching my team to do that, particularly with the junior agent, focusing more on scripts, because the senior agent is a bit more, she has more experience and she's more comfortable with that. But I've started a plan for first script, then we're going through, rebuttals and how to deal with that. And it really is just kind of diving into my database, my CRM database, and just turning around stones for gold, because there's a potential amount of buyers in there that just haven't been tapped because of the capacity issue that I've had. So.
Yeah, I don't know if you would agree with this, but it seems that in our industry, the fastest source to a paycheck is often in your contact list on your phone. But yet, why is it that so many agents are lost or just refuse to open up their phone and run through their contact list and start dialing.
I think a lot of people who get into the business and are new to the business are afraid. It's almost easier to know that you don't have the knowledge and call someone you don't know, because then it's less of a risk. But it's not the right approach. I mean, it's all about, you got to take the step to go to the people that know you first. I mean, you're one step ahead with these people. And so that's what, my junior agent, we were just talking yesterday, and she said, I'm not ready to really dive into my database. I'm too young. Most of my database is going to be for rentals. And I said, well, what about their family members? The first transaction I ever did was my husband's friend's parents. It was the first transaction I had ever done. And I wasn't necessarily 45. I just went through it. It has nothing to do with age. It's
right.
about confidence and believing that you have the support to get through the transaction successfully. And so it's really about just changing your mindset, and really understanding that this is such a benefit to even have any contacts that you can call, and having started, if you're coming from another industry, really starting there, because that's the essence of your business.
They want to help you.
Right.
And there's a lot of research around that word help
right.
and your friends. And so when you ask them for help, say, I would really appreciate your help, connect me with somebody that wants to buy or sell or invest, that resonates with them.
100%.
So it's an interesting thing. And a lot of agents that we talk to say, well, I don't want to feel like I haven't reached out in so long that if I reach out now, just when I need something, it doesn't feel right.
Right.
But that's a mindset too.
It is, but I think the approach there, if you do feel that way, is to figure out how you can help them first. Or at least to make a suggestion or an offer to help them, and do your research before you call them. Like, where are they working? What are their hobbies? Like, what can you do first to help them? And then they're even more apt to help you. Because calling up and just asking right away, I understand that sentiment, but there's a way to do it where you're also adding value to the relationship. And it doesn't need to be finding someone a job. It can be something as little as like, did you hear about this free concert next week? I know you like that band. Something little, just a suggestion of like it being a collaborative.
Well, and with social, and social stalking, you can really go to somebody's profile and go, oh, I see you went to this concert last weekend. I love them too. Just there's so many opportunities connect. It's interesting, the mindset. Most successful agents that we interview, SOI is at the top of the list. But for agents that are struggling, it's their least touched aspect of their business. And it's all that mindset. It's that fear of approaching or being judged by people they know for being salesy.
Right.
And so, people want to buy, they don't want to be sold, but it goes back to your point of having that value proposition.
Right.
What do you have to offer? And sometimes it's just owning it. And just saying, I know I've been brutal. I haven't called you, but I'm in real estate. I'm committed to keeping in touch and start going into things like, what's your favorite band these days? And are you married? And do you still live at 123 Main Street?
Right.
And it will loosen up from there. All right, so at some point in this conversation, I want to give you a little bit of warning.
Okay.
I'd love to talk to you about maybe what your biggest struggle is right now, and so that may take some thought, and maybe what your biggest success story has been this year. So that may take a little while for you to kind of think about that.
Sure.
Because I haven't really, this is all unscripted. I haven't prepared you for any of these questions,
like
and you're doing good.
Okay, my biggest struggle, I referred to this before, is really about systems and transfer of knowledge. Because I, for so long have done this really on my own. And I do admit I'm a bit of a control freak.
Right.
And a perfectionist. And so in scaling a team, it's a different set of, you talk about mindset, it's a different mindset, number one, right? It's not just about you, it's about making sure your team is happy and growing and learning, right? And I want to make sure that I have the right infrastructure for that, not just, that so that they only, they're not only using me as a resource, that there's other resources that are already built in and there for them, so that if I'm on, a 3-hour showing appointment, they're still effectively learning, engaging, and doing what they should be doing. So it's a struggle for me right now. And the program has really helped me kind of get ideas from other colleagues about how to tackle that. What's the best system, different things for that. But that's right now my biggest struggle.
And by program, the Time Ferry coaching program? Yeah. So transferring skills to your team members, but also delegation, a little letting go is an issue. So these are all common things that team leaders struggle with. How about accountability? Are you good at that, holding them accountable, or is that difficult?
That I am good at. That I am. I mean, a commitment to get something done. We do have weekly meetings, and that's something that I think if you don't do that, there's really no structure at all to the team, and it's important. I mean, I did that even when I had a finance team before I was working in real estate. I mean, you have to hold people accountable or else they're not going to deliver. And that's part of the reason why I'm part of the coaching program too, is because my coach holds me accountable, and it's really attributed to the success of my business because, I have friends and family that are wonderful and supportive, but it's another relationship to have someone that supports you, but also is making sure that you're on the top of your game.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I look at him like Coach Mike is like kind of like the chairman of the board. Yes. I mean, he's really, that's what makes him special, I think, is he's really immersed in your business, and he's a member of the team.
Right.
So that's awesome. What about in terms of expectations for your team members in terms of production? Do they have to do a certain number of deals per month or per year?
We don't do it per month just because the transactions tend to be bigger here and there's a smaller amount done, but we do it by volume. So I have an annual goal for each team member on a volume basis.
You sit down with them maybe during a business plan and come up with that?
Yes.
And so it's very specific to that agent.
Yep.
And how big do you think your team could get?
I don't want to have, a 15-person team. I think, a lot of what's important to me, and not to say that I can't maintain this, but at least for now, brand and reputation I talked a bit about earlier is key for me. Maintaining a brand in New York City and making sure that every single person on my team, assistant, salesperson, operation, whoever it is, maintains those values is easier done in this chaotic city with a smaller team, I believe. And so I think we would probably max out, I would want to say, at probably 6, and then in addition myself and an assistant. I wouldn't want to do more than that. And maybe I'll be eating my words in 5 years, I don't know. But that's kind of what my vision is right now, is can we keep it more of a close.
So how in terms of a radius, how big is the area that you focus on?
So I focus on Manhattan up to, call it, 110th Street, all the way down to the Financial District, and then a little bit in Brooklyn, Cobble Hill, Brooklyn Heights, Williamsburg, kind of that stretch closest to Manhattan.
So you mentioned values.
Yep.
Like, what's important to you that you're hoping is being not only translated to your clients, but they're actually expressing that in dialogue in their referrals? Like, you need to call Lindsey because you can expect this. What is that brand do you think you guys have established?
So it's a few things. I mean, number one is just an incredible amount of professionalism throughout every part of the transaction. I mean, in any industry, particularly real estate, and in any city, I mean, it can get pretty difficult to get through a transaction, and there's some emotions that are involved, and so just making sure that there's professionalism throughout with everybody, not just the client, not just the seller, the buyer, but also the vendors that come, the contractor that comes. 100% professionalism. That's number one for me. Number two is just having an in-depth knowledge of the market and what affects the market, and being able to communicate that to help people make a decision. So adding value that they can't just find on the internet. It's really from my experience and my team's experience being out in the field. And then a mantra that I always tell everyone on my team is it's always about under-committing and over-delivering.
Right, that's a good one.
It's huge. And it's day one, if anyone starts with me, that's what I say. And just keep it in the back of your mind. And that's even with timing, expectation, like when do we get the contract signed? Is it going to be today? You don't say today. You say probably, in 3 days, and then it comes back earlier. I mean, it's always about setting an expectation, and sometimes it's delivering difficult news to do that, but it's important to, to be able to set expectations properly.
Can you define that professionalism for us, or what professionalism means to you? One thing that I see is that you mentioned emotion. A lot of times I see real estate agents getting sucked into that emotion.
Yes.
So let's say the buyer or even the seller has some sort of conspiracy theory behind the motivation of one party of a transaction, and the agent gets sucked into that conspiracy theories. Oh yeah, that must be why they're doing this. Or their client could just be highly emotional.
Right.
And so they become highly emotional and hostile. Where do you draw the line in there? Like sometimes, like you said, I mean, you've got to be stern. You need to put your foot down.
Right.
That you have some days where you
you
gotta lay down the law.
100%.
So where is that line in terms of professionalism where you need that boundary?
To define the line, I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. I mean, number one, I don't care what is done after you're off the phone with the client and home and having a glass of wine with your significant other or whoever it may be, and like you can vent there and then, and that's the beauty of having a team too, right? Is because we can all go for a drink after work and just get it out, right? And so there's a time and a place for that, but it's not on the phone with the other broker. Even if the other broker is screaming, like I've had, my senior sales agent like looking at me with this broker screaming on the phone to her and just shaking her head, and that's how you have to approach it. You can't scream back. It's not effective. Even if your client's yelling at you like that, you really need to just always take a step back and don't let your emotions, they're warranted, and then, it's impossible to have them disappear, but it's all about whatever you need to do, meditation in the morning to just remain cool, because part of your job as a real estate agent is to lead people, not just your client, other brokers. You need to create collaboration and find a meeting of the minds somehow. And there's always something that will come up that can be a heated debate if you want to. But the better that you can just remain calm and bring someone down to a level where you can actually have a legitimate conversation about it, the better and the closer you are to getting a deal done.
And I would point out to anybody watching this that I've been guilty of that myself.
I have.
I mean, blown deals because I've gotten emotional and I've let my temper get the best of me. But I think what we're drilling down here is that really this goes back to your fiduciary duty. I mean, your job is to get the deal done. And if you feed into the emotion and the conspiracy theory, or if your client tells you to go F yourself and you tell them to go F themselves back, I mean, you're really not doing your job.
It's true. It's 100% true. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had a client screaming at me, and I know, and this is what you have to remember too, it often has nothing to do with you or anything that you did. It's just they're emotional about the situation. So you kind of just you're there to, you just let them have it. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in that scenario. I've just remained calm, said the facts, and hung up, and then a couple hours later got a call back saying, I'm so sorry.
Right.
That I just, this has been very difficult for me, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, you're not going to get that apology if you're screaming back at your client.
Do you have a line where can they go too far? You can say, listen,
yes, they can. There's a line at excessive disrespect. You also have to stand up for yourself. I'm not a servant. I am a respectable professional, and I am doing everything proper for this transaction, and I'm knowledgeable and I know what I'm doing. And if someone's disrespecting you, I've fired clients. I've fired big clients before because it's just not worth your time. I mean, you have to think, and this is what Coach Mike always tells me too, and it's true, you have to think about your time. Like, whatever you're spending your time on, you're not able to spend that time elsewhere. Right? So if someone's disrespecting you on a daily basis, you're going on showings, they're unhappy with the service you're providing, regardless of how wonderful you are, it doesn't matter if it's a $10 million deal. You got to move on, because the emotional, I mean, this industry is a really tough industry. We chose to be in a difficult industry, and there's a tremendous amount of upside, and there's a tremendous amount of, at least for me, intangible value to help people find the homes that they want to be in. But if they don't respect you, it's not worth it.
Yeah, I think it's important to point that out because some agents might have been listening to the last minute and go, okay, I just need to let everybody run over me. And that's not the case.
That's not 100% what I'm saying at all. There is a line, and it comes at ridiculous disrespect and persistent disrespect is just not acceptable.
One of the other things I want to talk about in terms of the job description of a professional real estate agent, but I find a lot of agents out there have no idea what the job description of a real estate agent is. And one of the things that I often hear said is that our job is to talk to people. But what would you say in terms the level of preparation that you do, the level of research that you do, the time that you spend perfecting your craft and really knowing numbers? Is knowing the market and knowing values and what sales are doing, is that part of your preparation process?
Yeah, daily, number one, just from an overall market standpoint. But before I go to any showing and take a buyer anywhere, if you're showing, for instance, a listing that you have, you need to know everything that's on the market in the building. You need to know all the comps in the area and what makes sure is better. And even if it's not better, you need to find a positive because the person that's coming to your listing is probably going to see those. So whether it's the building or whatever the case may be, you need to talk about or be able to talk about, what's going on in the building, if there's improvements being made, the appreciation in the building, in the neighborhood, what's happening. So if there's upside potential for appreciation because there's a tremendous amount of building going up in the area, you need to, the amount of prep for a listing appointment is that and more. And then for a buyer, you need to be able to talk about every building that they're looking at, the positives, the negatives, how it compares to the other listings that you're showing to them. Often, in New York City right now, there's a lot of new development. And so if you're showing new development, you need to know who the developer is, who the architect is, how much the developer's done in the past. Are they liquid? Is there something that can go wrong? If you're buying off a floor plan, there's just, the knowledge that it's not just going and opening a door. You need to be able to have an educated conversation and be their expert and advocate in making a very big decision.
Is it an expectation of your teammates to actually physically see properties, not just in a data format, but to go out and walk through them?
Yeah, absolutely. Open houses, broker open houses. I always send agents when we have similar listings so that they, it's not only looking on a screen, but also seeing it. Because as we all know, photography is a wonderful thing and tool, but it also can hide some pretty significant flaws. And so you're not going to know certain things until you actually physically see the property.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that very much. It's shocking how many agents are more reactive than proactive.
Yeah, that's true.
They're not going to do the research until somebody calls and says, "Oh, hey, can you go show me this property?" And then, or maybe some people won't even do the research until they know the buyer's serious or a seller's serious, and then they'll start diving in to the numbers. But we're going back and we're trying to really drill down to this definition of professionalism. If you start to think about professionals in any other field, and a lot of times in our industry, you'll see coaches and trainers, relate back to professional athletes or musicians and the amount of practice they put in.
True.
And it really isn't any different if you want to be super successful.
Yes.
I would imagine a luxury client, if you don't know the market, they're going to sniff that out pretty quickly.
100%. I tell this all the time that I think that the barriers to entry to become a real estate agent, particularly, in any market, should be more like taking the Series 7. That's what I think it should be. Because you think about the significance, regardless of whether it's New York City or any other town, it's as a percentage of the overall average income in that area. It's a significant investment, if not the most significant investment that someone's making. I think that we should be more like FA, really highly trained and very difficult to become a professional because we're advising people on huge investments.
If an agent's watching this and goes, a lot of times it's just they see the dollar signs of the luxury market. But as you mentioned, in this particular city, you're saying the luxury market is oversaturated or it's soft?
Yeah.
That's how you refer to it as? So it's definitely not easy. The transactions are fewer and far between. But what did you see as some of the benefits of getting into the luxury market? Why not stay at a lower price point and do more transactions than go to a higher price point and do less transactions?
Sure. Number one, I don't only do luxury. I mean, my team, we cover all price points. So, my team, we're able to do all price points. I focus more on the luxury end. There's always an opportunity. The market shifts. It now becomes a buyer's market for luxury. So now, while I do have listings, I'm focusing more with all the people that I have, international people that have thought about buying investment property. Now's the time. I can show you the prices have decreased, interest rates are going up. It's a good time because you're not in 2014 when there was no inventory and you couldn't negotiate at all on new development. So wherever there's a shift in the market, it's always interesting when I hear about, I've been in the business 6 years, right? And people talk about how the market was so difficult. But there's always an opportunity wherever the market shifts. You just have to be able to react quick enough and understand that and prep yourself. And if you're an expert on the buy side and the sell side, you really shouldn't be in the worst position. Yes, the price points will be lower, but perhaps you can transact more. So it's all about kind of reading and being involved in the analytics of it all so that you can really get yourself in a position to be an expert either way.
Yeah, it seems to me that the mega agent mindset is one that seeks every opportunity and takes advantage of every opportunity and does not limit themselves to one particular segment of a market. Or they do and they hire to that segment.
Yeah.
Do you personally still do open houses or you do?
I do.
I would imagine with the MLS restrictions that open houses would be very, very lucrative in this city. You get a good turnout.
I built a lot of my business from originally getting direct clients from open houses, and that's what my team focuses on now too. There's a lot, particularly with like the whole, the transition with the new business model at Street Easy, which Zillow's been doing for years, where people can actually buy to be on your listing. So you're not necessarily getting that many directs online anymore. It's important to be face-to-face with these people because that's how you start converting.
What goes into your process to get people through the door to an open house? How long does the preparation start in terms of marketing? And you send out or direct mail invitations or handwritten notes?
Yep, so we do direct mail. I also usually in the building will do an owner's mailing to invite them to the first open house, or sometimes we do it just for owners depending on the building and the price point. I also do repeat business at certain buildings, so I'll tell the concierge, and there's certain people like I know because of him, like certain owners that I think might be interested or know people, and ask him to personally tell them about it if it's happening at the time that it's happening. And I've had a lot of people come because he's kind of again going back to the advocate for you and finding people that kind of really want to help you because you've helped them. And just, obviously we post it on all of the websites and then just calling other brokers too to let them know.
Okay. Yeah. What about client appreciation parties? Y'all do those?
So, yes. I have not done one this year yet because I just had a baby 9 months ago, and so I'm blaming everything on that. But I do, and I will be doing one this year. I did one last year. I'm highly successful in that. It was a great time, but also got business that I don't think I would have otherwise gotten just by having people there that were clients of mine. That just, again, another way to keep people thinking of you as a real estate agent. Because there's if you don't keep top of mind with interesting things other than just a phone call or an email, you can easily, with the number of agents in New York City, that they can find another agent very quickly. So.
Are a lot of agents in New York City, particularly luxury agents, using video at a high level? It's
starting to become more normal, and what we've started to do at Compass is create more lifestyle videos with actors and models and I love that because it's all about creating and reaching a target buyer and showing them a lifestyle within the space, and so that's a new thing that we're kind of diving into now.
I think you touched on this a little earlier about actually branding the property and maybe not yourself. So when you're bringing that lifestyle component in, And that's really important.
Yes.
Because realtors tend, we're ego-driven, or a lot of us are, and narcissistic, whatever you want to call it, but we tend to make it about us, where we should make it about the property and the client as really the main focus, or the focus of the brand.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
All right, so have you thought of any great success stories lately besides becoming a mom?
So that is my greatest success story. So I can, yes, I think that this is, and just given the format of this, it would be valuable. So the end result is that I ultimately sold the highest price point property of my career last year. And so but the story is really getting up to that. And again, going back to like the power of relationships in the luxury market, this will be very compelling story. So I had a Chinese buyer who had ordered the new McLaren at the car show, and I knew that. And he wasn't actually looking for a residential property, but I decided, as a strategic cold calling strategy at the time, to cold call a building in New York City. There's only one where you can actually drive into the building and the elevator takes your car up to your own personal garage. And so what better property for him, somebody that just bought a new McLaren. So I was cold calling this building, didn't really have much expectation, reached one of the owners through actually email, and then he called me and he said, I'm not interested in selling my property, but I have another investment property on the market that I haven't sold. Like, can you go check it out? If you have any buyers, etc. I have it listed with another agent. So I went and I previewed the property, and then a couple weeks later he called me and he said, you're not going to get any business out of this, but I just want to pick your brain now that you've seen the property, because I still haven't sold it. So will you come to lunch with me? So we go to lunch. I convince him that it's not being shown properly, because it wasn't. It was a complete disaster. No one was living there, but there was a couch with stains on it. There was a dead roach in the kitchen. And this is a $2.5 million property.
Wow.
And so it was a perfect opportunity. And so I was in front of him and I explained everything that was being done wrong and everything that could be done right. And so he gave me the listing, and I sold it in 2 weeks for full ask, because I had it staged and, convinced him to do all of that. So then I was meeting with him a month later after I closed up, or after I think we were in contract, and he was like, he made mention of his friend who was having difficulty selling a property for $13 million. And so later, after we closed, I mentioned the friend again, and he made the introduction. I had to pitch. It wasn't just a shoe-in. I got that listing from another that was listed with another agent, and I sold it. It took a year, but I sold it a year later. I had met at that listing a direct that had come because they were interested, and I worked with that direct for about a year and a half, and we just closed on an $18.6 million property last year.
Wow.
So the power of connections, creating a relationship with each client, asking for business, that is key too. People don't ask enough for business. Like my client had made mention of this friend that was having difficulty. I had to remind him that he had said that to me. If I hadn't, I would have never gotten that introduction, and I would have never met this buyer that bought this $18 million property. And so there's this quote, and I'm probably going to botch it, but there's a quote that Steve Jobs said that said, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards. And so you just have to believe in something, your gut or whatever, and that's really what's driven him, and it's never let him down. And I think it's so true. I mean, telling a story like that is so impactful, but when I was going through it, I was struggling, and I didn't think I was going to sell the $13 million property. I mean, I had to extend it. It was like the client was one of the best litigators in New York City, so I had to convince him to lower the price. I mean, it was a struggle. It sounds so wonderful at this stage,
right?
But it's about being tenacious and really believing in yourself and continuing to work hard, and then creating value out of those relationships.
Well, the interesting part that I just got out of this story was that the client prefaced the lunch meeting by saying, you're not going to get any business out of this.
He 100% said that to me.
So there are a lot of agents who, when they hear that, may have not accepted that lunch appointment. And this goes back to something that John David Leonard was telling us just a few days ago about being consumer-centric.
Right.
We tend to be maybe a little too, selfish and maybe jaded about opportunities that may or may not come. And if somebody says there's no opportunity here, why go in that appointment? But look what happened.
Yeah.
The biggest deal of your career. I mean, you're just like, I'm not even hearing that. There's going to be an opportunity that comes from this.
Yeah.
So that's
100%.
really, really important. All right, we're almost done.
Okay.
The pitch. What do you think is the most important element of the pitch? I wonder if it might be confidence, but what do you think? I mean, if somebody is going into that listing presentation, and we can say, you can make a distinction between maybe a lower price point pitch versus that luxury buyer, what they're expecting in a pitch. But if you had to sum it up in a one word or a few, what do you think is the most important factor?
I mean, confidence is a huge one for sure, because someone's hiring you to represent them and to sell their property, and so if you don't have confidence, I mean, there's just no way. But I think probably second to that would be the idea that the pitch is not just a pitch. The pitch is everything that I am 100% going to do for you. And here's examples of how I've actually done it and been successful. And just having them actually believe and trust you that that's going to be the case. Because people hire people because they believe and trust them, really. So confidence is part of that, but also being genuine about what you're committing to deliver in marketing and showing them that you've done it before. And referrals are a big thing. References in terms of, having them call previous sellers, you could offer that, but it's all about legitimizing yourself to someone that doesn't know you. And so however you have your pitch created, it should exude that. It should show that you've been successful. It should show that you're an honest person and that you are going to do everything you say in your marketing plan and not just list it on RLS and wait for it to, someone to come and buy it. That you actually are going to hustle for them and work every day.
That's such a powerful point, and a powerful point to end on. I promise we're going to end this. If an agent is new in the business, they're very, very green. I could just hear this being a powerful script saying, my pitch is not a pitch. It's 100% what I'm going to do for you, and here's what it is. Yep. Here's the plan. We find that our sellers, our seller clients particularly want a plan, and you outline it and you commit to it. That could be a definite way for you to gain that trust, which ends up with you getting hired. All right. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been awesome.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up another Agent 251 podcast. Thanks so much for listening. You can find our show on iTunes, any place you get your podcast fix. We really appreciate the listening, and please share it with your friends. This show has been paid for and powered by JWRE, Jason Will Real Estate. You can find Jason, Diana, and the whole JWRE team on the internet and Facebook. And everybody have a great and productive and happy week.